All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the STEM Files. This is the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. Tonight is part two of the episode that took place last week, where we're talking about the need for our people to build with mathematics. And we're going to be doing it again with special guest, Mr. Akil Parker. So definitely stay tapped in for more after this. Right, as Jabril always says, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. I love that intro. I can't get enough of that. But thank you all for tuning in. This is, once again, the STEM Files. If it's Thursday, it's definitely STEM Files Day. We are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. We highlight the best and the brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the Black and Brown communities. My name is Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac. I'm a biomedical cardiovascular pathobiology, which is the study of how diseases form in the heart and blood vessels. I'm typically joined by my right hand, Jabril, aka Jabril Engineer. He is a civilian mechanical engineer working for the United States Navy. He works to make sure that those big fancy ships that you see out at sea work and function the way that they should. All right, family, but he's not with us today on camera, but he's definitely here with us in spirit. But I'm not going to go ahead and spend too much time on us. Tonight's about our guest. We have a return guest from last week. Last week's episode dealt with our people using mathematics to make their communities a decent and safe place to live, as well as a whole swarm of other things to do with mathematics. So please, family, welcome back to the platform for a second time in a row, Mr. Akil Parker. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, bro. I'm glad to be back.
Excellent. Glad to have you back. So last week, we talked a lot about self-development, community development, and we talked about those things along the lines of mathematics, right? So there was a question that we asked last week in regards to theology. You remember that question?
Yeah.
Bet. So did you get a chance to go over that or think more on that for the next one?
Yeah, I thought some more about that, and I processed it, and I started to think about, a meaning for that question. And I think my interpretation of it at this point is to, be able to use mathematics as a tool so that, you can live a happy existence while still on earth, before you transition into the spiritual realm,
right.
or out of the physical realm, that is,
right,
so
right.
that's what that meant to me.
Yeah, and that's exact, and I think that's exactly where Jabril was coming at from it. We're taught in the Nation of Islam to sit yourself in heaven at once, and we're not talking about the heaven in the sky. We're talking about creating a heaven and an environment for yourself that's heaven-like on earth, and doing it in real time. So we wanted to just hear your thoughts and your perspective on building a reality or a heaven in a sense. As you're here and alive and well. So can we talk more about that?
Yeah, and I think about that since you bring up the Nation of Islam. I think a lot about Clarence 13X, was a former member of the Nation of Islam, who then brings forth like the 5% Nation and supreme mathematics and everything. And I've been thinking a lot over the past few years about like those connections and like how math is seen as like a science of the universe and like like a science for Black people to use. And I know like growing up in the 90s with like the hip hop culture, it was very, very much embedded in like a lot of the rap music that we listened to and just a lot of the culture terms and terminology and whatnot. And it just shows like how mathematics in and of itself is very central to just our existence, and even within religion.
That's right. That's right. And what have you done per se with mathematics to make your personal life better? What are some things that you've done to improve your overall environment?
Just well, beyond the teaching, beyond like teaching young people, teaching adults, teaching elders, people older than me, in different programs and whatnot. But also just like trying to show, like kind of understanding the philosophy of life and like the philosophy, of the world and of our existence, and being able to see it, like because it's modeled after a lot of that is modeled after like different procedures and different concepts that you see in algebra or in
Right.
geometry. Like, for example, like we might have mentioned this last week, but like solving an equation, you have to, add something on. If you're trying to isolate the variable x, you need to add a certain number on the left side of the equation and add the same number on the right side of the equation. So that right there, that's an example of balance and applying balance, which is something that we as human beings, like we constantly strive for. A lot of times we won't reach it, but we want to stay balanced some kind of way, either within our individual lives or overall, like have some overall balance, and also like attention to detail. Like one of the things I also like always find myself like trying to like reinforce with my students is like another thing math will teach you is to pay attention to details, right? As they
For
as they say,
sure.
the devil is in the details, right? Because you can
Right.
go through the whole problem, and if you overlook or leave out one negative sign, then that'll screw everything up, right? So it teaches you like you gotta develop like this like very serious like knack for like paying attention to detail, or else things go haywire. And we see that a lot of times in our personal lives. And I know like there's a certain school of thought where people say don't sweat the small stuff. And I think that has to be. I mean, that's it. I think that's deals. It depends on the context of the situation, right?
Right.
Sometimes you
Right.
shouldn't necessarily sweat the small stuff when they don't matter, right, in the grand scheme of things. But a lot of times, like when we're trying to get things done and try to solve problems and trying to make progress, you have to sweat the small stuff, because a lot of times people will just like neglect and negate the small stuff, and then we wonder why things don't work out properly, because we just kind of
Right.
we didn't pay attention to detail. We weren't really detail oriented. We weren't really serious about our process, no matter what it was or what it is. And things don't go the way we want them to.
For sure. For sure. You brought up something very key. When you're working with groups, right? And I've experienced this a lot. In the work we do here in Richmond, but um, there are times where you can be working with a group of people and you're doing the exact same thing that another group of people did maybe 20, 25 years ago, but you're trying to figure out, okay, what did the group do wrong in the past
Mm-hmm.
that's making it so hard for us now, and that they couldn't get the job done? It's
Right.
because there's small things and details that they missed, and the next group will make the same mistake if they don't pay attention to those details. So I definitely bear witness to that. But I wanted to talk about all this math really, a little bit more along the lines of the business side of things.
Okay.
So when you started all this math, did you form a team first, or was this something that you just went out and did on your own, and then as you got stronger, you brought more people on?
I mean, it really kind of just organically developed on some kind of like, welcome home Roscoe Jenkins type time, like team with me. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it wasn't really by design like that, as if I didn't want to work with people, but I kind of was just, kind of doing my own thing. And, at this point, I mean, like at one point, my wife helped me a lot, with doing a lot of like developing the logo and some of the marketing and creating Canva ads for, different things I was offering and whatnot. And then, due to other responsibilities and other concerns, she kind of backed out of the business. But then like Nasim, my oldest 16-year-old son, what he did is like he started tutoring. And then I started taking that more seriously. So now we kind of, it's basically, and this is something I've been taking for granted. I have to check myself and stop taking this for granted and realize that like, yo, this is really it's a father son, black man and black son, like, tutoring company. Like we're out here
Right.
like
Right.
trying to like bring mathematics knowledge and proficiency like to the black community, father and son. So yeah, started out, with me, and then, kind of Like I said, my wife gave me some assistance at one point for a consistent period of time. And then, it's me and Nassim, basically, and other people, have helped me. But I'm in the process now of trying to figure out how to build a team around all this math. So that's what I'm in I'm not even really in the process of building the team beyond me and Nassim. And really, matter of fact, I gotta include Asada too, because Asada is like my 9-year-old daughter. She's very integral to the YouTube space and building up the YouTube channel, because a lot of the content that we do that's on the elementary level, so she's in the 4th grade, it's done. I'm doing videos along with her, so and through those videos, I'm not only like showing the viewers like how to do those math concepts and how to do those types of math problems, but I'm really also trying to like model for parents, mothers, fathers, grandparents, uncles, aunts, whoever, any old heads, like, okay, this is how you too can show, your young people, your youngins, how to do these math problems, how to do all this math, when they come home with homework or they got, different projects to work on or whatnot. And, and also kind of like, deliver it in a way where they don't have to be intimidated and they don't have to go back to that dark place when they remember, those bad memories from being in middle school or being in high school themselves. And they see me, me and my daughter on the screen, and we look like we having fun,
Right.
She dancing around and, being silly, and like, she got the marker in her hand and she, we working on problems together. And it's really like, we just, just a father and his daughter just bonding. Me and Nassim are going to start doing some videos too. So I'm not even in the process of even building a team. I'm in the process right now of like strategizing around how to best build a team. Like, what do I actually need in order to make this successful? And then I have to start thinking about like who would be some viable candidates, to work with me on the business side, to make it grow, because it's really key to build a strong foundation, with anything,
Sure, definitely. All right, so we're gonna go into and I bear witness to that too, man, because we when we first started OMS in 2015, we had some minor misunderstandings, when it comes to starting a team. We had a whole board of directors set up, and we didn't even have the company wasn't even there all together yet,
Right.
and that, I wouldn't call it a mistake. I would just call it a bad move in a sense when it comes to forming a team and building a company. We had to really sit down and work out the idea of the company first, and then bring in people for the team. So we learned a lot in that phase, and we definitely don't regret it. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up a question from Jabril. Let's see what we got here.
I'm hoping I can answer this one on the spot this week.
Yes, sir. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, this is a good one. All right, so even if someone, this is a question from Jabril, who is our usual co-host. Even if someone does not study mathematics in a formal way, how can one live their lives in a mathematical, or study mathematics in a formal setting? How can one live their lives in a mathematical way, even if they don't study math?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question. Can you hear me? All right, family. Seems
Even
like
if
we
they
got
don't
some.
study math, I mean, if a person applies critical thinking, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Is my audio good?
Yes, sir.
Is my audio good?
It's good.
Can you hear me? My audio's good. Okay. If you like living your life in a mathematical way, I mean, just I think a lot of people do live their lives in a mathematical way and don't even realize the formal training, or as much formal training in mathematics. But if you're considering all the different factors that are at play and whatnot, can you still hear me?
Yes, sir. I can still hear you.
Okay. If you're considering all the variables, all the different factors that are at play, and you're trying to make sure that things are always balanced. You're checking for contradictions. You're making sure that things are equivalent. Things that should be equivalent are equivalent, and things that are not equivalent are not equivalent. You practice, you're living mathematically. You're looking at things through a mathematical lens. A lot of times people don't know that that's what they're doing, but that in fact is what they're doing. We can see it in like a lot of the common like idioms that we use in our society. Like, when somebody feels like they're being lied to, like a person's being dishonest or disingenuous with them, and then you respond to that by saying like, well, something's not adding up, right? Like what you've done is you've done an analysis of, what is going on, and what this person has presented you with. And then, you're looking at it mathematically, like, and what the reality is based on my observation, they're not matching up. So there's an incongruity there, right? Same thing with like, like when somebody says like, what's the difference? So there's like a certain value can be assigned to one activity or one belief or one feeling, or one action. And there's a certain value that can be a quantitative value that can be assigned to another. And if somebody tries to say that, those two are not equivalent, that means there's a difference. So if we assign a value of 60 to one thing, and then, we feel like one person feels like, well, the other thing that I'm presenting is the same thing, even if it's in a different format or it looks different, but that should have the status the same quantitative value of 60 also. So 60 minus 60 is 0. So we would say it ain't no difference. But then the other person might say, well, wait, this has a quantitative value of 60, but what you offering me actually is a quantitative value of 20, right? Based on my perception. So now there is a difference. So now we're talking about 60 minus 20, that equals 40. So there's a 40 unit difference, right? And I think a lot of times, like, I like this question because, well, for one, it's challenging me to think more deeply about mathematics, but also because it exposes how, a lot of us, we kind of we sell ourselves short, and we feel like we're so much more deficient in mathematics than we actually are, because we're using mathematical principles, we're using mathematical concepts on a regular basis, but we don't think that we are because we don't call it that, right? And I think that these are some of the conversations that we have to have in our community, and when people are doing these things, we have to like recognize this even more, so that way when that same person that can stand on the block and have this conversation and be like, yo, what's the difference? And, and have a valid point, right? When they ask that question, what's the difference? Or somebody says, well, the difference, and they respond by saying, well, the difference is this, this, and this. That same person should be able to go and sit in the algebra classroom and be able to do their thing. But a lot of times the teachers don't make, like, and I've been guilty of this. I've only recently have I started to make these types of connections between like just that type of thinking and, and formal mathematics, like formal algebra, geometry, calculus, and so on. So I definitely think that that's necessary, and that's going to be helpful. That's going to be helpful for the culture, once we start doing that, because then it's like, the brothers and sisters on the corner, then they may have more confidence to feel like, okay, I can do this, and I can help my children with their homework when they come home, because I'm unbeknownst to me, I'm really doing my thing in math. I'm really excelling in math. I just didn't know it.
Right. Absolutely, man. And you make it the strides that you're doing with all this math to really. Can you hear me? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yes, so the striving, the way you're striving with all this math to really bust up all of those negative connotations with math, and making sure that our community can understand it in all walks of life is really inspiring me, because you're separate. You're not separating mathematics from daily life. You're not making it out to be some standalone subject that you got to take in school, and if you don't take it or pass it, you're a dummy. You really making sure that our people understand that they can master this, and it shouldn't be an obstacle for them if they want to advance in their personal lives or advance in their professional lives. So we definitely appreciate you on that. We wanted to take the time to acknowledge once again that flagship product developed and distributed by the Nation of Islam. and that is the Final Call newspaper. Is Black-owned, uncompromised truth, and it's a reliable source of information that you can trust for yourself and your family. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a clip, family, a little small commercial of the Final Call newspaper, and then we're going to go into what this week's issue is about. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, let's go for it.
Now you can get the same uncompromising truth you've come to expect from the Final Call newspaper on all your connected devices. Subscribe to the Final Call digital edition today. Go to subscribe.finalcalldigital.com.
All right, family, definitely check that out. And this week's edition of the Final Call newspaper is about a campaign that was started by members of the Black community, you know, about withholding spending as a tool in the fight for justice. And it enters our 6th year, and it keeps on growing. And it's Up with Jesus and Down with Santa. Family, we're all about family and about you spending time with your family and spending out of what you have for love of your family members. But what we don't support is the concept of Santa Claus, you know, and we also want to make sure that we, as a Black community, are diverting our dollars away from that concept into the development of our community. So definitely check out the latest issue of the Final Call newspaper, finalcalldigital.com, Up with Jesus, Down with Santa. All right, family. So once again, thank you, Akil, for joining us today. This is a very interesting set of episodes. You know, we've never gone this long on mathematics topics, so I'm learning, and I'm sure Jabril's learning as he's watching. Let's talk more about, you know, your community work. You know, especially when it comes to your children. What are some of the things that, and we can start with your oldest son. What are some of the things that they have learned business-wise, math-wise, when it comes to dealing with our people and dealing with the community?
Well, from early on, like, so when Nasim was real young, and also, you know, Sada, when she was from real young, just like riding in the car, we used to talk a lot. You know, we had conversations around, like, you know, Black nationalism, and
right.
We used to listen to, you know, old Malcolm X lectures, The Ballad or the Bullet, Message to the Grassroots, you know, and some of his like even lesser known like speeches, you know, because that influenced me greatly ever since I was a child as well, you know, just learning, you know, and as I got older, I started to really like study the work and like the writings that had been done about him by people such as like John Henrik Clarke, and even like his wife, late wife Sister Betty Shabazz. So that kind of like provided like a framework for like, you know, economics, you know, and us like always like, you know, me always trying to not enforce, but, you know, impress upon them the necessity of like, you know, supporting Black businesses, supporting Black people, taking care of home first, going to your people first, you know, and trying to find somebody in your community or of your community that can provide for you before having to venture out, you know, to another group. And also, you know, just showing that, you know, it just makes sense, you know, like in a very like matter of fact way, like showing them that, you know, it's logical, you know, and just showing them that, you know, every group does this. So, you know, we should do this too. And we do it a lot also. We should do it more. But I think that a lot of times when we do it, it's not highlighted enough. So, you know, it seems as though we collectively are doing it less than we actually are. A lot of times just due to necessity, you know, we're doing it anyway. And I think, you know, even like, you know, in the hood, like when somebody just, you know, a sister's going to get her hair braided by somebody else in the hood, or like, you know, a brother's got to, you know, get something from another brother, like, you know, just around the way. Like a lot of times those things are kind of like, you know, not even considered because, you know, a person doesn't have like a formal LLC or a formal, like, you know, incorporated business with, you know, paperwork with the state that they reside in. But that's still like a form of like supporting your own people, you know? So in terms of like, you know, raising and developing, my children, like these are conversations that, they've always been privy to and been exposed to. And, right alongside with like, the mathematics instruction, like from an early age, whether we just like in the house and, something comes up, something that's relevant, something that's mathematical, or, maybe we ordered a pizza or something and, I'm teaching them about fractions, from, breaking down like the different slices of pizza and like, how much did you take? Oh, you took one slice. So that's an eighth of the pizza you took, okay, well, we ate 3 slices. So that's 3/8 that's going right now. And okay, I just took another slice. So that's 4/8. And why is 4/8 equivalent to a half? So just those like kind of like organic math lessons that, are very important teachable moments that a lot of times like we leave, it's kind of like leaving money on the table. If you don't recognize them, when they're right in front of you, then, you won't take the opportunity as a parent or an elder, a concerned elder, you won't take advantage of the opportunity. But we got to start taking advantage of those opportunities. And then that's why another one of my goals is to, expose those opportunities, expose those teachable moments to our people. So that way, when they see it, it's like, okay, yeah, I remember, brother Akil was talking about this, and actually I plan on, I'm working on a book right now, specifically geared to those type of teachable moments where we can make mathematics more regular and more normal,
Right.
So when our children end up going to school, if they go to school, and they're not homeschooled, or even if they go into a homeschool space, they'll already be very familiar with a lot of the content that they'll be presented with within whatever curriculum they're looking at. So it's not like they're being exposed to it for the first time. So that's kind of like how I've always wanted to, develop my own children. And of course, like with each successive child, I have 3 children, I've gotten better. So things I didn't start as soon with Nassim, I started sooner with Asada. And things that, I started with Asada, I'm going to start even sooner with Kwame, So yes, I just learn as I go. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. You got to show your growth as a parent and as an educator. And they're good ways apart in age, for you to learn as much as you could have with Asim and then bring it on to Asada. So it's definitely cool to see that. But Jabril had another interesting question I thought was pretty dope. He asked, if you were to present a mathematical formula for success, what would it be and why?
A formula for success, man. Now, in terms of strict mathematical formula, I couldn't provide that, but I will say that one of the things that, I think about this a lot. So again, this is another great question. Shout out to Jabril with these questions.
Yes,
one of the things I think about a lot is just repetition. Repetition is definitely got to be part of that formula, because I think a lot of people, they would be great at mathematics if they just put the work in and they just did, repeat it over and over, just did more problems, like especially young people. Because, and then like we got this other school of thought with teachers saying that, like, they claim that there's no research that substantiates the belief that homework actually helps. And I'm like, I don't understand how how you could claim that homework won't help or more practice at a skill won't help. I think what they're doing is they're conflating 2 different issues. What we really have is a time management issue, because it is valid that, young people need to, get fresh air. They need to be able to go outside and play, experience nature and, just be able to, decompress sometimes and kind of relax with their family and whatnot. And, that's cool. That's true. But they also need the time to practice their skills so that they can master their skills, or at least become proficient at their skills. So, and a lot of people, it's like, if they just, okay, you tried one equation, tried to solve an equation, and it was kind of rough, it's kind of difficult. Okay, you just, if your teacher can effectively give you the step-by-step process, and then you understand the fundamentals that you would need in order to utilize and apply in these types of equations, you gotta put that work in, and you gotta practice and do a lot. It's very similar to sports, or even video games. Like a lot of times I'm thinking back constantly when I'm in tutoring sessions, I'm thinking back about, like, when I was a youngin' and I was like, me and my homeboys, we used to play video games constantly. And I'm thinking back, like, man, like when we figured out how to beat certain levels, it's like, okay, I know the formula now. Like each week you can equate each level of a video game that you like to play with a certain type of math problem. And it's like, okay, on this level, I know what to do when this happens, when this guy comes, when that guy comes, when they shoot this gun, when they throw that knife or whatever, that sword. And I'm thinking back to, like, Sega Genesis in 1992. You know what I mean? Like, the different, I'm thinking about the different levels, right? And like, okay, how do we beat this boss at the end? And then you learn the patterns. Like, okay, if I stand in the corner, when he swings that, that wrecking ball, or playing Sonic the Hedgehog or something, I know he's not going to hit me. As soon as the pendulum swings back, I go run and jump, hit him 2 times, and then go right back to the corner. So that's a formula, right? That's an algorithm, basically.
Right.
And I can do the same thing when I see certain types of math problems. I visualize it the same way. Like, okay, when I see this, I know what the step-by-step process is for this type of problem. And then we get to another level of the video game. Then there's a step-by-step process for, to defeat, to conquer that level, to surpass that level, right? You know what I mean? So it's really the same thing. So it's really a matter of, like, just shifting our perspective and our mindset in terms of how we view mathematics generally, which is why, one of the things I pride myself on, and, all this math is really like it's a movement, because it starts out as a private math tutoring company, but then we're really going beyond that. We're getting to the point where we're trying to change the relationship with mathematics. We're trying to, like, change the narrative, where, like, Black people generally will start to feel comfortable and confident, like, no, I can do this, because then we think about, like, what type of doors will open up. I mean, and even if your goal is just to, even if you're not a person that subscribes to Black nationalism, okay, that's fine. That's your political outlook. Even if you just want to get a job from a white man, okay, but imagine how much more equipped you would be, and much more marketable you would be, so to speak, if your child, or if you, right, have this competency in mathematics, right? If you can actually do calculus, because then we're talking about, okay, going to college, and, like, what can't you major in, right? Because a lot of people, they choose their major in college based on how many math classes are required. So a lot of people are like, all right, what about engineering? Nah, too much math. I got to go up to Calc 3. Are you crazy? I would never do that, right? But what if you have this? What if you have that confidence, like, you took Calc 1 in high school, or, you did well in it, or you just did well in math. Maybe you didn't take calculus in high school, and this is like what Bob Moses was into with the algebra project. One of his idea was, rest in peace to Bob Moses, but his idea was that every child should be at least at a minimum calculus ready by the time they graduate from high school, right? At least calculus ready. So now imagine what type of opportunities you'll at least feel the confidence that you can accomplish and can achieve, because you've done that, and your mathematics background is really strong. That really changes a lot. It changes everything. It's just, it's really, it's groundbreaking. Like, I like to think of it as, like, how, like disruptive, like a disruptive company, like how, there's disruptive technology, right?
Yeah.
At one point,
not doing things the traditional way. Right.
Yeah. And at one point, the automobile was disruptive technology, because everybody was riding horses. And then the car comes along, and people are like, I would never buy a car. My horse is good. I'm good with my horse, right? Disruptive technology.
Yeah.
We got
they
all
said
this,
that
like,
car would never be successful. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's like, what we're doing is, like, this is disruptive technology. This is in a form of, like, disruptive technology, because we're trying to disrupt the status quo, because the status quo is mathematics is it's a science and a discipline that's, like, exclusive and meant for only certain people to have access to and to learn. But what I'm saying is, I'm trying to, like, work with people to democratize it. And, especially in our community, like, let people know, like, no, you too, you can do this. Like, you can learn this, you can become proficient at it, and you really can. And it's not even on no pie in the sky, like I'm some, like, motivational speaker just trying to make you feel better about yourself. No, I'm tangibly, I can show you tangibly, like, but the work is going to be on the person, because the way you really learn math is not by me or anybody, like, showing you how to work through a problem step by step. The way you learn math is by taking notes from a person showing you step by step, and then, like I said, repetition. You gotta go into that quiet space by yourself, or even in a group with other people, and do those problems on your own. It's kind of like similar to sports. You got to shoot in the gym. you know, by yourself sometimes, right? Your coach can show you, like, give you the form, how to shoot a jump shot and everything, and like all these different things. But at some point, you got to go and do that work by yourself. That's how you really become excellent and become great. And that really is the thing that you know is the barrier between a lot of people becoming great at mathematics and not having the ability, or not even knowing that, oh, this is how you become good at this. Like I was at a school, I was visiting a school today here in Baltimore that I'm about to do some consulting work with, and I'm sitting with the young sister in a geometry class, and she was like, you know, like she's really like, she doesn't know her multiplication facts, and sister's in the 10th grade, and she belongs in the 12th, but she has, like, you know, attendance issues, right? And I'm telling her, I'm like, listen, you just need to practice. Because you, like, as I'm explaining it to you, you're understanding, you're picking up on these things, but I can tell you just you haven't practiced a lot. So we got to really just like create like opportunities and make it comfortable for like our young people to really be able to practice. You know, they got to be able to practice their math. And if you don't practice the math, like, you can't, it's not a spectator sport. Like, you can't just watch somebody else do it. Even if you go to like the All This Math YouTube channel, you can't just watch me do a video and think, okay, I know it now. No, that's not how it's going to work.
Right.
That's only the first part. That's the guide and the reference for you, right? But you got to go into your textbook and pull up them, like, okay, go to that page with those 20 or 25 or 30 problems and like go in on those problems. And you got to make the mistakes. That's productive struggle. And then you got to go back to my video and say, okay, what did I do in that situation? And then you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, that's why I keep getting it wrong, because that's what he did, that because that number was a negative or that number was a fraction, and that's what you got to do in that situation. But you only learn that from doing it on your own. And I think that's another problem that people have, is they feel like, or they unfortunately, they're deluded into thinking that they can learn math just by watching somebody at the front of a classroom do it, or watching somebody on a YouTube video do it. That's not how it works. Like, you learn it from actually doing it. You got to be given the example and, you know, given like a framework and given the reference, but you got to actually really do it on yourself. So in a way, you're really autodidactic. You're really teaching yourself, you know?
Right. Wow. And you know, and I have a question within that, you know, too, in terms of, you know, repetition and being able to take what you see your instructor do, whether it's online or in person, and then applying it to the question that you have. When I was in middle school, and leading up to high school, you know, I would watch instructors do examples, and it was clear at times. You know, it was to the point where I can do a problem. But then what happened when I got to another problem, and that particular problem doesn't look like the previous problem, I get a little discouraged.
Right.
So I overcame that. But what would you say to somebody now to help them keep pushing forward and not give up? You know, even though they see 10 questions and the ninth or 10th question is totally different or modified in a sense from the previous questions. How do you encourage them to keep moving forward and keep pushing and still be able to use what they were taught for those questions?
So I like that question. And I think what I would say to a person, and what I'm saying, trying to push to a lot of young people and promote, is this idea of like this term I've learned recently called like intellectual fearlessness, like intellectual fear, like feeling like, because it's easy to get discouraged. And I know, because I've been there before. As a student at times, I would get discouraged myself. But you know, when you develop this intellectual fearlessness, like, okay, yeah, this problem is different, but I'm gonna find out like what is the common theme, like how is it similar to the last problem? It looks different, right? But then again, I got to go back to the rules and the steps, right? Because a lot of times when you have thorough notes, and that's another thing that, you know, young people need to understand, is like how to take notes in a math class. Matter of fact, I've been procrastinating. Me and Naseem are supposed to do a webinar about that, like how to take notes in a math class. Because that's something that's like, well, for one thing, a lot of people just don't know how to take notes, right? Academically,
That's a big problem.
They've never been taught. They've never been taught how to take notes. And then it gets even worse, and it's compounded in a math space, because people think taking notes in a math class means whatever the teacher writes on the board, he or she is solving an equation, I just copy that down. And I had to stop my students and say, listen, why are you copying all this and you have no idea what any of this means? Like, cool, copy it down, but what you have to start to do is like create a narrative and create step-by-step processes and create that yourself and write that in the margins of your paper. Like, whatever you copied, you should understand why that's there. Like, you should understand, and any time, and anybody's watching this, when you're taking notes in a math class, every number, every letter, plus sign, minus sign, parentheses, exponent, radical sign, you should know why it's there, and you should know where it came from. It's similar to a movie, similar to like watching a movie, watching an episode of your favorite TV show. You want to know what happened from one scene to the next. If you ever find yourself in a situation where it doesn't make sense, like, how did this happen from one scene to the next? Then you start looking at it like, yo, this is some shaky writing. Like, this show is trash for real. Like, what are they doing? Right? So your math problems, you don't want your math problem to be trash. Like, you want to be able to say, okay, I understand where this came from, where that came from, and I think part of speaking to intellectual fearlessness, another thing we got to work on is when we're in these educational spaces, we got to like push our children to be like bold enough to sometimes raise your hand and say, wait, hold up. Where did that number come from? Because a lot of times we feel so defeated by these negative experiences in math classes. We don't even want to ask questions. So we just kind of just sit there and suffer in silence. And then, feel like, oh, well, I'll get it later, or like, I'll ask somebody later. Like, no, you got to ask right there, right? Because this, again, every math problem is a story. It's a story. And I mean, and that's real. Like, the fact, and I've been thinking about that a lot recently, like how mathematics as a language is just another way to express reality through a different language, the language of numbers. Now, and not just numbers, but numbers and letters, numbers and symbols. But it's just another way to tell a story. Like, we're telling a story about what happened. And we can see that becomes evident because when you look at a math word problem, we can go into a textbook or go to any place where there are math word problems, and the word problem might be a paragraph long. And then what we do is, when we have that skill of how to solve word problems, we're able to identify the important information within that paragraph, extract it, develop an equation, write the equation down, and then solve the equation. So, and then we tell the story of what happened. So that equation, that simple equation, right, that might represent, or it might be a system of equations that might represent that information in that paragraph that we started out with. We're telling the story. It was telling the story of what happened. So it started out with all these letters in the English, all these letters and words in the English language, but now we just translated it to like 5x plus 3y equals 10. And it might be a system, and 4x minus 2y equals 15, right? So we just tell them the story in a different language. And I think also, if we start to tell young people and, impress upon them this idea that math really is a language, then they'll start to embrace it like differently. They won't feel so defeated when they don't get it right away, because it really is a different language. So if, somebody start out like trying to, study Arabic or Kiswahili, and they don't fully understand it like the first day, they're not going to give up. Like, they expect it's going to be challenging. Like, it's a whole different language. Like, you've been speaking this one language your whole life. Now you're going over here, venturing over, trying to learn a totally different language. You wouldn't expect to just grasp it right away. So I think if we embrace math that way, then, we'll give ourselves a little more grace, and we won't want to just give up so easily.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Wow. You definitely hit it right on the nail, and I wish I knew you back then. But this has been dope. We're not gonna go a full hour this time around, but we definitely want to get some closing remarks in before we close out. But for those who are watching and you would like to follow as much as you can about the STEM Files and learn more about what we do, and even explore the other guests we've had on the show, definitely check us out on social media, hosted by Tariq Cardiac and Jabril Engineer. It's on STEM Files. It's at the STEM Files on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, and The STEM Files on Facebook and YouTube. We serve as the voice of STEM talent and Black culture, highlighting some of the best and brightest minds in science, technology, engineering, and math in the Black community. Family, this has been part 2 of our people being able to use mathematics to build their communities. And for those who are watching, definitely go ahead and drop some comments or some questions in the comment section. We would love to hear from you. Also, family, for those who have been committed and have stuck around with us from the very beginning, thank you so much. As we said last week and the week before, we are now over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. This is monumental for us. As I mentioned before, Jabril and I, we really don't care about this, but it's always good to show and support. Always good to show how much you appreciate your support. So we definitely appreciate those who've been rocking with us since the Blog Talk Radio days in 2016, all the way to YouTube now. We're growing, and we look forward to your continued support as we grow even further. All right, family. But yeah, so this is the end of the show. I wanted to ask you, Akil, what advice would you give to somebody who is starting a business centered around mathematics like yours? Or what advice would you give to them, and what would be some key things to understand when it comes to starting a business centered around teaching math?
Define your market. Not try to do too much, but also knowing what too much is, at the same time, because and I think that's going to be a function of like who you are, as a person, and what your capability is, yeah, those are some of the things that I would definitely say to take into consideration if one's starting a business surrounding mathematics, and just know that you're doing God's work, basically, because it's something that our people definitely need, and it's something that not only that our people need, but it's that they don't know that they need. Like, they don't know they need it because they don't know that it exists. So I think it's one of those types of things, and it's not even like some ultra capitalistic, like, okay, we're gonna be these types of hardcore marketers that are gonna convince people that they should buy this product because we're gonna get celebrities to endorse it and all this type of stuff. Like, no, this is something that it doesn't require all that. Like, people know that they have deficiencies in mathematics, and that is very widespread. But again, in this society that we're in, we've been socialized to just accept it, and try to just go through life kind of without dealing with that. Kind of like with mental health. We've been socialized to just accept when our mental health is not addressed properly, or when we're not even considering our mental health in healthy ways. We just accept. For people to start to address their mental health, at least consider that I might have some issues, because a lot of us, we know the people that kind of wear their kind of dysfunction as a badge of honor. It's like, we got those friends or those family members or whatever, or people we know, like, oh, he crazy or she crazy, and it's kind of like, that's not cool. Like, what I mean? Like, so now people are like, starting to address those things. So I think with mathematics, it's like it's the same way. You really, if you start a business, around mathematics, just know that, this is very important work, and, just know specifically what you want to do too, and what your end goals are and what your end game is, and definitely throw your hat in the ring. Because I think, and if it's going to be something like along the lines of tutoring, I think that's very important. And also, because another thing we got to change is this idea that tutoring is a punishment, or tutoring is only for the dumb kids, that couldn't get it. Right. Because that is the prevailing notion. That's the prevailing idea. A lot of people don't want to admit that, but that's the prevailing idea. Like, you think, oh, you got a tutor, but see, it's different. Unless people that we think have financial wealth, when they have a tutor, then it's like a status thing, right? But other people, it's like, oh, you must be dumb. Like, you can't get it you can't get it in school. Like, you're not that smart. So people, they look at it as like a bad, like shame. They're like, they feel shame. But we gotta change that narrative, because we gotta look at tutoring. Again, we can draw a parallel to athletics, right? You're on a team and you're practicing with your squad, right? But if you're that type of athlete that wants to excel and be even greater, then you may have you may be fortunate to have somebody to work out with you one-on-one, or you may be a part of another group and work out with some people one-on-one, or in a small group after practice. You may just go that, and that's kind of how tutoring is. So going to class is like practicing with your team, but then tutoring is, okay, I'm getting this individual attention to work on these certain skills that I'm weak at, or skills that I'm okay at, but I want to be great at. And that's what the tutoring is. And sometimes you just need somebody to like be your hype man, like, just hold you down, like, walk you through the problem and give you that confidence. So that way you're able to go sit in class, especially if, you're in a school that might be, have like, it's grounded in like, global white supremacy theory and Eurocentrism. And it's a very like, cold and uncomfortable space and a hostile space culturally and whatnot. And you don't feel, safe and comfortable asking the teacher a question because learning is a very vulnerable activity. So that tutor is the one that, okay, well, I meet with my tutor. He or she helps me, do these math problems. And then I feel confident when I go into that hostile space, I feel like I can still win. Again, like with sports, I'm confident in my athletic ability. I'm confident in my basketball ability, my football ability, my baseball ability, or whatever your sport is, because I've been working real hard. So when I go into those hostile spaces, we playing against these teams that, are arch rivals and their fans hate us, we still gonna do our thing because we've been practicing hard. And they can hate all they want. And actually at that point, the hate can energize you,
Sure. Absolutely. Bear witness, man. I definitely bear witness. But we definitely appreciate you coming back for a second time, man. And we definitely want to have you back sometime in the future. Matter of fact, we want to have the whole family on, you and your son and your daughter, and having y'all on at the same time and just talk about what it's like working with each other, especially in the work y'all are doing. But how can people get to some of your services? How can they find you on social media, anything like that?
Yeah, social media at All This Math, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook at All This Math. Also the website, www.allthismath.com. And probably the most important vehicle or tool that we have is the YouTube channel. So please check out the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Check out some of the videos. See if there's anything on there that is beneficial to you right now. Also, if you need certain content, leave a comment on one of the videos, or actually no, send a message on Instagram or Twitter about a specific type of math problem that you would like to see, and we can create that content for you, because that's what we're trying to do. So yeah, the YouTube channel at All This Math, just type that into the search bar and you'll see me. You might see me in the side of doing a video on the thumbnail or whatnot, and yeah. So yeah, check me out on YouTube. Check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Bet. For those who are watching, if you want the links to all those things, if you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description, and if you're watching on Facebook, it's right up there in the caption. But once again, bro, thank you so much for coming through. It's always good to have you on, and we definitely hope to have you back again. Any closing remarks? Anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we conclude?
Just do your problems. Do a lot of problems. Matter of fact, I think I'm gonna get a T-shirt made that says, All This Math. Do 50 problems.
I like that. The push-ups, with the push-ups vibe to it. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key.
Okay, bet. Yes, sir. Okay, cool. All right, family. Well, this has been another edition of the STEM Files. We won't be back next Thursday due to the holiday, but we'll definitely be back December 30th with a phenomenal brother. I know him somewhat personally, as he's a member of our Muhammad Mosque here in Richmond, Virginia. But I'm not going to give too much away on our brother. You definitely see it on our social media pages. But for those who have tuned in, thank you all for coming through. Hosted by Tariq Cardiac and Jabrain Engineer. The STEM Files on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, and the STEM Files on Facebook and YouTube. Once again, family, thank you all for tuning in. Peace.